My mother-in-law publicly demanded a paternity test for my newborn daughter at her own lavish welcome home dinner party, claiming the baby looked nothing like her son and accusing me of sleeping with my boss. What she didn't realize was that I had already secretly conducted a lab-certified DNA test 2 weeks prior. And the results didn't just prove my husband was the father. They exposed a 30-year-old family secret that completely destroyed her marriage, her reputation, and her entire life. To truly understand the absolute insanity of what transpired at the Oak Ridge Country Club last Friday, you first need to understand the toxic ecosystem of my husband's family. My name is Clara. I am 27 years old, a software quality analyst, and for the past 4 years, I have been married to Ethan, a kind-hearted, soft-spoken 30-year-old civil engineer. Ethan is everything a woman could ask for: attentive, hardworking, and deeply loyal. However, he was raised under the suffocating thumb of his mother, Evelyn. Evelyn is 54 years old, born into old money, and carries herself like the undisputed queen of suburban Columbus, Ohio. She is the kind of woman who measures human worth entirely by bloodlines, zip codes, and country club memberships. From the very first day, Ethan brought me home to meet his family. Evelyn made it crystal clear that I was not welcome. I grew up in a working-class household. My dad was an auto mechanic, and my mom worked as an elementary school librarian. To Evelyn, I was an opportunist, a gold digger, who had somehow hypnotized her golden boy into marrying below his station. For years, I endured her microaggressions in quiet silence. At family dinners, she would make subtle jabs about my wardrobe, my career, and my family background. When Ethan and I bought our first home, a charming 3-bedroom house that we paid for entirely on our own, Evelyn took one look at the hardwood floors and sneered, "Well, I suppose it's adequate for a starter home, though the neighborhood leaves much to be desired." Ethan's father, Arthur, is a quiet, reserved man who made millions in commercial real estate. Arthur was always kind to me, but he was completely browbeaten by Evelyn. He avoided conflict at all costs, usually retreating to his study whenever Evelyn started one of her grand political tirades. Then there was Ethan's older brother, Julian, the undisputed golden child. Julian was an arrogant copy of Evelyn, working at Arthur's firm, driving luxury sports cars bought with company funds, and looking down on everyone around him. For 4 years, I held my tongue. I kept my distance, smiled politely at holiday gatherings, and focused on building a quiet, loving life with Ethan. But everything changed when I got pregnant. When Ethan and I broke the news to his parents at Thanksgiving, Evelyn didn't congratulate us. Instead, she put down her wine glass, looked at my belly, and said, "Well, I hope you're ready for the financial burden, Ethan. Children are expensive, and I'd hate to see your personal savings drained." Throughout my 9 months of pregnancy, Evelyn's hostility morphed into intense suspicion. She began keeping tabs on my daily routine. My job required me to collaborate closely with our lead system architect, David, a handsome, 35-year-old man who happened to be dark-haired with striking blue eyes. David was happily married with 3 kids, and our relationship was strictly professional. But whenever Ethan mentioned that I was staying late at the office to finish a project launch with David, Evelyn's eyebrows would twitch. 3 months ago, I gave birth to our beautiful daughter, Maya. She was born healthy, vibrant, and utterly perfect. But genetically, biology played an interesting card. Maya was born with a thick head of dark wavy hair, bright ice blue eyes, and a tiny, distinct heart-shaped birthmark behind her left ear. I have auburn hair and green eyes. Ethan has dirty blonde hair and hazel eyes. The moment Evelyn walked into the hospital room and looked into Maya's bassinet, her eyes narrowed. She didn't offer to hold her newborn granddaughter. She didn't tell me I had done a good job. Instead, she leaned over the bassinet, pulled down the blanket, and whispered loud enough for the entire room to hear, "Blue eyes? Dark, wavy hair? That's fascinating. Nobody in the Vance family line has ever had blue eyes or dark hair. Arthur's family is strictly brown-eyed, and so is mine." Ethan tried to laugh it off, exhausted from the 16-hour labor. "Mom, genetics are weird. Clara's grandfather had blue eyes. It just skipped a generation." Evelyn turned her head slowly toward Ethan, her expression cold and calculating. "Or perhaps, darling, traits are inherited from someone who was actually in the room when she was conceived." I was appalled. "Are you implying something, Evelyn?" I demanded, my voice trembling with rage from my hospital bed. Evelyn just gave a fake, sugary smile, patted my arm condescendingly, and said, "I'm just observing biology, dear. A mother always knows her own blood." Over the next 6 weeks, Evelyn's passive-aggressive remarks escalated into a full-blown whisper campaign. She began calling Ethan's aunts, uncles, and cousins, casually dropping seeds of doubt. "Have you seen the baby? She doesn't look a single bit like Ethan. Poor Ethan is so naive. He works so hard while Clara spends all those late hours at the office with her boss, David. You know, David has dark hair and blue eyes, right?" Family members started looking at me differently. At a weekend barbecue, Ethan's aunt refused to hand Maya back to me, making a snide comment about how it's so hard to tell who babies take after these days when mothers have so many male friends. I confronted Ethan that night. I was crying, postpartum hormones making the emotional weight 10 times heavier. Ethan, your mother is destroying my character. She is telling your entire family that I cheated on you and that Maya isn't yours. Ethan took my hands, looking torn and exhausted. Clara, I know my mother is out of line. I know Maya is mine. I don't doubt you for a single second. But you know how Mom is. She loves drama. If we ignore her, she'll tire herself out. Fighting her just gives her fuel. She isn't going to tire herself out. Ethan, I yelled. She is trying to mark my daughter as illegitimate. If you won't defend us, I will. That night, as I sat in the quiet nursery nursing Maya at 2 a.m, a fiery resolve took hold of me. I realized that as long as Evelyn breathed air, she would use this mystery to poison my daughter's life. She would make Maya feel like an outsider in her own family. I needed concrete, undeniable, court-admissible proof that would shut Evelyn's mouth forever. The next morning, without telling Ethan or anyone else, I contacted a renowned, accredited DNA testing laboratory downtown. I ordered a certified legal paternity test, which required chain of custody protocols, formal cheek swabs, and government IDs. I told Ethan that we needed to do a routine pediatric blood screen for Maya, and I brought him along to the clinic under the guise of an allergy panel. While there, the technician collected certified cheek swabs from both Ethan and baby Maya. At the same time, because I was deeply curious about our extended genetic traits, I paid an extra fee for a comprehensive multi-generational ancestry and relative matching database report using Ethan's DNA profile. 10 days later, the official, wax-sealed lab results arrived in my email and via certified mail. I opened the document sitting at my kitchen table, expecting to see a simple 99.999% paternity probability so I could slam it in Evelyn's face. And indeed, the first page confirmed it. Ethan was 99.999% unequivocally the biological father of Maya. But when I scrolled down to the second document, the extended relative and lineage match report, my jaw dropped. My breath caught in my throat, and my heart began hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The report analyzed Ethan's genetic markers against public and institutional family databases. According to the genetic markers, Ethan shared 0% paternal DNA markers with the patriarchal line of Arthur Vance. I reread the page 5 times, thinking it was a typo. I cross-referenced the haplogroups. Arthur Vance belonged to haplogroup R1b. Ethan belonged to haplogroup I2a. It was biologically, scientifically impossible for Arthur Vance to be Ethan's biological father. Ethan's DNA profile flagged a 50% direct biological father match to a man named Gregory Vance, Arthur's estranged, black sheep younger brother who had moved to Chicago 30 years ago after a bitter falling out with the family. I sat back in my chair, frozen in sheer disbelief. The pieces of the puzzle began assembling themselves in my mind with terrifying clarity. 31 years ago, Evelyn had an affair with her husband's younger brother, Gregory. She got pregnant with Ethan, passed him off as Arthur's son, and secured her place in the wealthy Vance family estate. Gregory was quietly banished to Chicago shortly after Ethan was born. Evelyn wasn't just being paranoid about my baby's dark hair and blue eyes. She was projecting her own deep, dark, terrifying secret onto me. She knew that genetic traits could randomly resurface from previous generations, and deep down, she was terrified that Maya's appearance would prompt someone to look closer at the family tree. Her relentless attacks on my virtue were a desperate, psychological defense mechanism to divert any suspicion away from her own 30-year-old lie. I printed out 3 copies of the lab results, placed them in heavy manila envelopes, locked them inside my fireproof safe, and waited. I knew Evelyn was planning something big. A woman like her doesn't just spread rumors, she likes a grand stage. I didn't have to wait long. 2 weeks later, Evelyn announced that she was hosting a formal granddaughter welcome dinner at the Oak Ridge Country Club. She invited over 40 guests, including Arthur's prominent business partners, Ethan's aunts, uncles, cousins, and close family friends. When Ethan told me about the party, he looked relieved. See, Clara? Mom is extending an olive branch. She wants to introduce Maya to the high society family circle. She's trying to make peace. I looked at my husband's innocent, trusting face and felt a wave of pity. Ethan, your mother doesn't extend olive branches. She sets traps. But don't worry. We are going to that dinner. On the night of the event, the Oak Ridge Country Club's private dining room was breathtakingly opulent. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceiling. Silver cutlery gleamed on white linen tablecloths, and waiters served vintage champagne to dressed-up guests. I wore an elegant emerald green dress, my hair swept up, looking poised and confident. I held Maya in a soft silk sling across my chest. Ethan walked beside me in a tailored charcoal suit. Evelyn was in her element. She wore a sparkling sapphire cocktail dress, holding court near the head table, sipping wine and accepting compliments from her wealthy friends. But whenever her eyes drifted toward me, there was a cold, cruel glint in them, the look of a predator preparing to pounce. Dinner was served. A 5-course meal of filet mignon and lobster tail. Throughout the meal, Evelyn made sure to drop loud, deliberate comments. "Oh, look how fair Clara's skin is," Evelyn remarked to an aunt sitting across the table. "It's so interesting how Maya didn't inherit a single physical feature from Ethan. Not his bone structure, not his eye color, not his hair texture. It's almost as if Ethan's genes were entirely absent during conception." A few guests chuckled uncomfortably. Ethan flushed red, coughing into his napkin. "Mom, please. We're eating. I'm just making an observation, sweetie!" Evelyn chimed smoothly. "A grandmother has a right to wonder about her family tree." I didn't say a word. I just smiled, took a slow sip of my ice water, and felt the heavy manila envelope resting safely inside my leather handbag on the floor beneath my chair. At 8:30 p.m., as the waiters cleared the dessert plates, Evelyn stood up. She picked up a silver spoon and tapped her crystal wine glass. Clink, clink, clink. The room fell quiet. 40 pairs of eyes turned toward the head of the table. "Friends, family, and distinguished guests," Evelyn began, her voice projecting effortlessly across the room. She held her head high, assuming a look of profound, solemn grief. "Thank you all for joining us tonight. As you know, the Vance family name has stood for integrity, honor, and tradition in this city for 3 generations. My husband, Arthur, and I have dedicated our lives to protecting that legacy." She paused, taking a dramatic, heavy breath. She turned her gaze slowly toward Ethan, and then settled her cold eyes on me. "Which is why what I am about to do breaks my heart as a mother," Evelyn continued, her voice trembling with manufactured emotion. "For the past 3 months, I have watched my son, Ethan, live in blind innocence. I have watched a woman enter this family under false pretenses, taking advantage of my son's kind nature." The room went dead silent. You could hear the hum of the air conditioner. Arthur looked startled, leaning forward. "Evelyn, what on earth are you doing? Sit down!" "No, Arthur, I will not sit down," Evelyn declared dramatically, raising her hand. "I will no longer allow our family heritage and our hard-earned estate to be passed down to a child who does not carry Vance blood." She reached into her designer clutch, pulled out a thick legal document, and slammed it onto the white tablecloth. "I have hired a private legal firm," Evelyn announced, her voice echoing off the walls. "These are court petition papers for a mandatory, legally binding paternity test for baby Maya. Clara has spent numerous late nights at private hotel conferences with her male supervisor, David. I have photos of them sharing dinners together. I refuse to stand by while my son is forced to raise another man's bastard." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Ethan's aunt covered her mouth. Guests started whispering frantically. Ethan stood up, his face pale with humiliation and anger. "Mom, stop this right now! You are losing your mind! I am saving you, Ethan!" Evelyn shrieked, tears springing to her eyes in an award-worthy performance. "Look at the child! Look at her eyes! She is not yours!" If Clara has nothing to hide, she will sign these court papers right now in front of everyone. Evelyn looked at me, a triumphant, sadistic smirk playing on her lips. She thought she had trapped me. She thought I would break down crying, run out of the room in shame, or refuse the test, thereby proving my guilt to high society. Instead, I slowly stood up. I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. I calmly reached down into my handbag, pulled out the thick, wax-sealed manila envelope, and walked slowly toward the center of the room. "Evelyn," I said, my voice perfectly clear, calm, and resonant. "You have spent the last 3 months attempting to publicly execute my character. You have called me a cheat, a gold digger, and an unfaithful wife. You put on this pathetic, dramatic show tonight thinking you would humiliate me." Evelyn sneered. "The truth hurts, Clara. Sign the paper or admit your baby is a bastard." "I don't need to sign your paper, Evelyn," I replied softly, "because 2 weeks ago, I went to an accredited, court-certified DNA laboratory downtown. I had a full, legal paternity test conducted." Evelyn blinked, a shadow of doubt crossing her face. "What?" I pulled the first certified document out of the envelope. "This is a certified chain of custody paternity report signed by the chief geneticist of Ohio State Diagnostics. I'd like my husband to read the highlighted section aloud." I handed the paper to Ethan. Ethan's hands were shaking as he looked at the official state seal, the lab registration numbers, and the genetic sequence tables. Ethan cleared his throat, his voice ringing out across the quiet room. "Probability of paternity, 99.999%. The alleged father, Ethan Vance, cannot be excluded as the biological father of Maya Vance. Paternity is confirmed." The room burst into hushed chatter. Ethan's aunt clapped her hand over her heart. "It's confirmed! The baby is Ethan's!" Evelyn's face turned bright red with embarrassment. She stammered, scrambling to save face. That's impossible! You faked it! You paid off some private lab to forge those documents! Look at the baby's traits! Dark hair! Blue eyes! Where did those come from, Clara? Explain that!" "I'm so glad you asked, Evelyn," I said, a cold, dangerous smile spreading across my face. "Because I didn't just order a paternity test. I also ordered an extended ancestral genetic lineage report using Ethan's DNA profile to trace where those blue-eye recessive genes originated. I pulled the second document out of the manila envelope. Evelyn's eyes widened. For the first time that night, the smug triumph vanished from her face, replaced by a sudden, terrifying look of pure panic. She realized I had gone deeper than a simple paternity check. "Clara, stop," Evelyn whispered, her voice suddenly losing all its booming strength. "That's enough. This is a private family matter." "Oh, no, Evelyn," I interrupted, stepping closer to Arthur, who was sitting at the head table looking utterly confused. "You insisted that a grandmother has a right to know her bloodline. You insisted that our family honor must be protected. Let's protect it." I handed the second certified document directly into the hands of my father-in-law, Arthur Vance. "Arthur," I said gently, "please read page 3. Out loud." Arthur put on his reading glasses. He looked at the certified lab seal, and then his eyes scanned down the page. As he read, the color completely drained from his face. His hands began to shake violently. The paper rattled in his grip. "Arthur?" Ethan asked, stepping closer to his father. "What does it say?" Arthur looked up from the paper. He didn't look at Ethan. He didn't look at me. He slowly turned his head and stared at Evelyn with a look of absolute, soul-crushing horror. "Arthur, don't read that!" Evelyn suddenly screamed, lunging across the table to grab the paper. "She's lying! It's a fraud! Don't look at it!" Arthur slammed his fist onto the table so hard that the crystal glasses shattered. "Silence!" he roared, a sound so terrifying that Evelyn froze in her tracks, cowering backward. Arthur's voice cracked with devastating emotion as he read the certified genetic lineage match aloud to the 40 shocked guests in the room. Genetic lineage analysis. Ethan Vance shares 0% paternal DNA markers with the patriarchal line of Arthur Vance. DNA profile confirms a 50% direct biological offspring match to Gregory Vance. The room went completely dead silence. Nobody breathed. Nobody moved. Arthur looked at the paper, tears welling in his old eyes. "Gregory," he whispered, his voice trembling with 30 years of betrayal. "My brother." The revelation hit the room like an atomic bomb. Ethan stared at the paper, his mouth open in total shock. I'm Uncle Gregory's son?" I looked directly at Evelyn, who was standing frozen against the wall, shaking uncontrollably, her face as pale as a bedsheet. Maya inherited her dark, wavy hair and striking blue eyes from her grandfather, Gregory, I said, my voice echoing through the silent country club. "You spent 3 months accusing me of cheating, Evelyn, because you were terrified that my daughter's face would expose the fact that 30 years ago, you slept with your husband's brother, got pregnant, lied to Arthur, and forced him to raise another man's child as his own." Evelyn opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. She clutched her chest, hyperventilating. "Arthur, please. It was a mistake. I was lonely when you were traveling. Please." Arthur slowly stood up. He looked at Evelyn, not with anger, but with total, unadulterated disgust. He didn't yell. He didn't throw a scene. He simply reached down, pulled his heavy gold wedding ring off his finger, and dropped it into Evelyn's half-empty wine glass. Plink. "You are a monster," Arthur said softly. "You have spent 30 years acting like you were better than everyone else. You destroyed my relationship with my brother. You treated Clara like garbage. And all along, you were a lying, unfaithful fraud." Arthur turned to Ethan, his eyes filling with tears. He grabbed Ethan's shoulders tightly. "You are my son, Ethan. I raised you. I changed your diapers. I taught you how to catch a baseball. You will always be my son, but that woman is dead to me." Arthur turned to me, nodded respectfully, and walked out of the banquet hall. The fallout was swift, brutal, and absolute. Within 10 minutes, every single guest had vacated the private room, eager to escape the suffocating nuclear radiation of Evelyn's ruined life. Julian, the golden child, tried to defend his mother, but when he realized that Arthur's prenup contained a strict infidelity clause that stripped unfaithful spouses of all marital assets, Julian quickly abandoned her to protect his own position at Arthur's firm. Arthur filed for divorce the very next morning. Armed with the certified DNA report, Arthur's high-powered lawyers enforced the 30-year-old prenuptial agreement. Evelyn was stripped of her country club membership, kicked out of the family mansion, and cut off from all family trusts. She was forced to sell her luxury jewelry just to hire a defense lawyer, but the court ruled entirely in Arthur's favor. Today, Evelyn lives in a cramped, one-bedroom rental apartment on the outskirts of town. Her high society friends have completely erased her from their social calendars. Nobody invites her to luncheons, charity galas, or dinner parties. She is utterly, completely alone. As for our family, the truth brought us closer than ever. Arthur officially adopted Ethan legally as an adult to secure his inheritance, ensuring that Ethan and Maya remain his rightful heirs. Arthur spends every weekend at our house, doting on little Maya, playing with her in the backyard, and spoiling her rotten. Ethan and I used a portion of our savings to buy a beautiful farmhouse on 5 acres of land outside the city. Maya is growing up happy, loved, and surrounded by peace. Evelyn has tried calling Ethan multiple times, leaving tearful, frantic voicemails begging to see her granddaughter, claiming she is lonely and depressed. Ethan never calls her back. He simply deletes the voicemails, sits down at the dinner table with me and Maya, and enjoys the quiet life we built together. Because as my father-in-law Arthur said on that fateful night, respect, loyalty, and family aren't defined by loud demands or proud titles. They are proven by the truth, and the truth always wins in the end.